Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mining Now. Today we have the Kal Tire Mining Tire Group back on the show. And whenever we have Dave Allan on, and when it's in person, we always rave about how great it is to be in person. But this one, we're remote. So now we've got to say how great it is to be remote, Dave.
It's like old times.
It's just like old times. Yeah, the nostalgia. No, it is good to have you on, and I'm glad we've got Dave Allan. He's the VP or Vice President Canada at Kal Tire Mining Tire Group, and we have the Director of Business Insights at the Kal Tire Mining Tire Group, Mark Goode on. Mark, welcome to the show. Good to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Jared. Pleased to be here.
Mark, there'll be a lot of focus on a white paper that you did referring about tire management. And so we're going to cover a lot of that. But I'm going to start, Dave, just quickly. Can you just give us some insight into how mines or how the industry approached it in the past?
Yeah, I think with most things are going pretty quick these days versus the old days. I would say in the old days, tracking tires and tracking maintenance was done by paper, and then paper moved to Excel, and Excel probably stuck around for quite a while, and now it's gotten into some tire management systems. And for us at Kal Tire, it's the tire management moves from tire tracking into tire maintenance into tire planning. I think that's the most important piece. So as we continue to move forward in this space, that we're creating that customer value while we're still being able to show customers what it is that we're doing with their tires, what we want to do with their programs, and how to get the best life we can out of them.
Is it when over these shifts, like sort of these over years, like we've talked about Tom's, the Maple programs. Retreading. How long has retreading been around? Is that
Long before I've been here, I can tell you that it's been around for a long time, and not just in the mining space, obviously in passenger tires, those kind of things. It's really just a new lease on a casing, right? The casings are designed to last a long time, much longer than the treads. So retreading is a great way to get more life out of the tire, save yourself some cost. And now the retreading that is done is we're getting incredible hours out of retread tires that, again, as technology evolves, it just becomes better and better. When you take that advancement in retreading and then merge that with the ESG portion of that, where you can not buy a new tire, which means keeping tires in service longer, keeping them out of landfills longer, or back into recycling longer, or creating new tires using new rubber, I think it's a win-win.
Does the industry, just going back to that sort of over the past, have you noticed, so, sort of an obvious question, but just sort of more the details of it. How much different, though, does the industry approach things like downtime, sustainability, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and like you're saying, it's moving so fast. Is it 5 years from now it's going to be, double the focus?
I think it's always going to be the focus. Definitely in surface mining, it's always a bigger focus just because the tires cost more. But I mean, mines have been doing predictable maintenance planning for an awful long time. I think it's moved into that space now where they see what else can we put into that bucket? What else can we do better? And I think that's on companies like ourselves to say to customers, this is how you can do these things better. So a lot of customers rely on us to tell them how can we do the tires better? And by using these kind of systems, it's I don't want to say it's the same, but it's kind of the same as the maintenance systems that they use for their large trucks. We use the same type of thing for the tires, just obviously focused on that rubber.
Let's talk about our Heavy Industry World Tour brought to you by Savannah Equipment, supplying mining equipment worldwide. And Corporate Traveler Canada, helping companies travel the globe simpler, faster, easier. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry World Tour. Created and designed by industry leaders with decades of frontline experience, Sophie is a platform that brings workers home every day. Give your workforce the communication tools they need on the job to do it safely and productively. Visit Sophie.com today to discover how you can leverage Sophie to increase efficiencies, mitigate risk, and optimize collaboration. Safer, smarter, Sophie. SafeSite has developed a suite of innovative technologies focused on step change improvements that impacts vertical mining, shaft measurement, underground mapping and survey, mine rescue, and emergency response underground. SafeSite solutions introduce new possibilities in approach and efficiency while keeping every site safer. SafeSite solutions deliver valuable data that can quickly be turned into actionable decision data that allows effective and safe operation. Digital guide alignment will reduce shaft maintenance costs, underground mapping drone technology that removes shadows for 100% accurate reconciliation, and mine rescue drones that extend the reach and range of responders on surface and underground. Visit safesitexp.com for more info. Founded in 1989 in South Africa, the Bloom Burton Engineering Group is a world leader in ventilation, refrigeration, and cooling systems for underground mines. BBE Consulting Canada, created in Greater Sudbury, Ontario, is part of the BBE Group of companies since 2016. Its services include mine ventilation and cooling system modeling, feasibility studies, detailed engineering, procurement and construction management, as well as site ventilation surveys, ventilation audits, and training mentoring for underground mines across all Americas. You can reach out to BBE Consulting Canada by visiting bbegroup.ca or writing to enquiries@bbegroup.ca. Also, watch out for BBE's upcoming episode on mining now.
I got to ask before I jump over to Mark. I noticed you got a new shirt on. It's Kelpro.
I do. I think we'll probably talk more about that at CIM, but
okay.
Kelpro is going to be a banner label for all our innovations at Kal Tire. So
okay.
We're very excited about it, but I think we'll talk about that probably at CIM.
That's the in-person one.
Yes.
Mark, this white paper has a lot of information. We're going to have a link to it. I'll just tell the audience right away. We're going to talk about it here, but we are going to have a link to it to your website to actually go read through this, because there's just details that's hard to capture in a conversation. But maybe if we could start, just give us a summary about what it's about.
I think as Dave said, and following from him, mining customers have always focused on productivity above all. They make money when the fleets are moving above all ore from into the crusher into the mill. I think from a tire management point of view, historically we focus more on the tire performance bit, which is always critical to helping move productivity, but probably less on the productivity side. And by productivity, I'm meaning what's the work we're needing to do and how efficiently we can do that to maximize availability for the fleet. So historically, we've been looking at the tire performance and less on the tire and productivity. And what I'm trying to put across in the paper is there's no right or wrong, but both are critical. I think I touch on MTBS, or mean time between service, which is a standard used maintenance term. We can apply that for tires just as easily, and that has a great benefit of bringing both the performance bit of the tires, the longer they last, the less the truck should come down, with the availability piece of really focusing on how efficiently can we do that work. And what I'm trying to get across in the paper is the more efficiently we can do the work, the more we can drive productivity. And as Dave mentioned, with the tools we've got, specifically Tom's, but there are other tools too, we as a service provider can put far more focus onto that in our discussions with our customers.
You already touched on something that's interesting, that the difference in focus, that performance versus the performance of the tires versus the productivity of the actual operating mine. So again, I don't know it's an obvious question, but there's the nuances in it. Is what is the difference? So when a mine is going for the productivity, is it they're driving the trucks harder? What are the differences between those two focuses?
I think mines, of course, always drive for more productivity and always have done that. That hasn't changed. It's really from our side that there are two drivers of that. One is the performance of the tire itself, and that will always remain a key one, the choice of the tire for that customer application. And as a service provider, ensuring we get the most out of that product, that's always going to be key and will drive productivity. We're just layering onto that the focus of the how we do the work that we need to do. How can we do that as effectively as possible? And maybe I can best explain that, Jared, through an example. If you have a site of 100 trucks, it may be that we have 500 tire changes or pieces of work we need to do in the year to service those trucks. What we're really just focusing on is those 500 jobs we have to do. how by planning, aggregating, scheduling the work more efficiently, what's the fewest number of downtime events that we require to do those jobs? And with a system like Tom's, we can just focus far more on that because we're tracking the events more effectively. And by planning further in advance, and by planning, I'm just meaning identifying the work that needs to be done, whether that's an end of life, a repair, a rotation, in advance, we can aggregate that work more effectively. And we can really measure the impact of, say, doing that work in 150 events, downtime events rather than 200. There's a real gain for the customer from a productivity point of view.
Hey mining enthusiasts, registration for CIM Connect 2024 Vancouver from May 12th to 15th is now open. Last year, this convention had over 6,800 participants from 60 countries, with 1,796 delegates, 702 booths, and 320 presentations. Secure your spot and register now at convention.cim.org. CIM Connect 2024, where quality and innovation define the experience. Your trusted partner of choice, Best Tech Engineering, is excited to announce that they have acquired Spencer Engineering. This allows Best Tech to add mine hoist expertise to their existing suite of services, including mining, power, electrical, instrumentation and automation, mechanical, and structural divisions. This diversification will offer clients the highest level of service and value for their projects. Don't miss out on this exciting new chapter of engineering excellence. Reach out today at besttech@besttech.com to learn how Best Tech can help you. L&H Industrial can custom engineer and build from the ground up any heavy equipment assembly or machine that you need for your operation. Their worldwide 24/7 field services network is on the job whenever you need heavy equipment troubleshooting, repairs, rebuilds, relocations, or replacements. And thanks to their specialized design and engineering and state-of-the-art manufacturing and repair services, they are a go-to international supplier for improved components and custom assemblies for heavy industrial machinery. Visit lnh.net to learn more.
I'm trying to understand when you're walking through it, it makes sense. On a surface level, it's very clear. But then I think, okay, if you're going to let's say it's on the surface, it's the same, no pun intended, it's the same, it's 100 trucks on both sites. How is one, if you're comparing, the two, how is what they need going to be different on one site versus another one?
Let's take that example then. We've got two sites, and let's assume they have the same truck fleet and the same numbers of trucks on those fleets. And in many ways, it's the same operation. But the strategy on the mines, based on their requirements, are different. Let's say the first mine is constrained for tires. It doesn't have as many tires as the other mine. Its focus is going to be, how do I get the most out of those tires? And that's going to lead to a strategy that's including repairs. We're doing rotations. We're doing things aimed to maximize the life of that tire. We're probably running the tire as long as we can on the truck. That's going to help drive tire performance. And in the white paper, I talk about a site where I'm comparing these two sites, and a site that's pushing tire performance, the steps we're doing from a strategy point of view makes a difference. And the difference in the example that we can see is about $500,000 a year of benefit, maximizing tire performance and therefore reducing the spend. The $500,000 by focusing on tire performance. On the other side, and let's say it's a site where they're more truck constrained, they don't have a number of spare trucks, and it's more important for them to make sure their trucks are working as hard as possible. So they're far more focused on productivity, and because of that, their focus is saying, look, I want the trucks down as few times as possible. Now, the downtime cost of a large 300-ton class haulage truck or bigger can be into the thousands of dollars of an hour, certainly depending on the commodity. And the average downtime per event for tire work can on average be 7 or 8 hours. Part of that time is changing the tires themselves, and there's also a lot of delay times for travel times, getting the operators in and out, waiting outside the shop, the wash bay, etc. And it's very easy to run up to that. Each downtime event can be $20,000, $30,000 of lost availability. And each time you can reduce those events, there's a real benefit for that, and more than you can gain on the additional tire hours. And in the example I share in the white paper, we have that site that's focused on tire performance where we see a $500,000 benefit. The other site that was focused on availability, and as a consequence, it was working as hard as possible to reduce the number of downtime events by planning, aggregating work, the strategy they're choosing. We saw a $10 million difference from year to year on that site, that second site, by giving more availability, by reducing the number of events, by simply doing the work that's required to manage that fleet from a tire point of view in as fewer events as possible, was giving a $10 million availability gain to the customer by focusing on minimizing those downtime events as opposed to trying to maximize tire performance.
Something that stands out to me in this is because quite often on other episodes with the companies we feature, they'll talk about a fairly transient industry in mining, that you'll have people moving around from one site to the other. So I'm wondering, are you running into then people coming, if they come from one site, and this is their management system here, like the stuff you're talking about, they're pretty significant. It's a pretty significant difference in approach. You almost have to be retrained every time you go to a new site. If you kind of go in with that, this is the way it can be, I feel like you could miss a lot.
I think that, you're right. There is a lot of movement between sites. One of the benefits of having this system across different sites is over time, we're talking the same message across all our operations. And the message I'm saying is not a unique message.
Right.
The tire service providers have been trying to push in this direction for many years. What I think has changed for us is we have a tool that's allowing us to measure this far more effectively than before. As Dave was saying at the beginning, customers are always focused on productivity, and they're aware of the number of events, the length of downtime. The difference now is we're more aware. And the tools we're developing, it's not saying one route is better than the other. It depends on the requirements of the customer. Remember, I talked about tire constrained, truck constrained. They're the key drivers of either way. It's just giving us the tools so we can measure that. And we can have discussions with the customer saying, look, going this route, the opportunity for you from a cost point of view is this, and this is the productivity point of view, that we can make better decisions due to the tools we have than we were able to do in the past. And as per the title of the white paper, it's why the strategy we want to follow matters. And it's spending the time when we go with the customers and sit with them and say, look, what's important? What's the drivers? And you talk about people going from site to site. Strategy changes, of course, on the same site, depending on multiple factors, and it will change from year to year. So there may be years where we need to focus on tire performance. There are periods in the cycle where there's a shortage of mining tires, especially during boom years. There may be other times when the commodities price is dropping or whatever other reason that we may be focused on. Look, we need to focus more about keeping the trucks running and the productivity side. It's having that discussion with the customer to say, look, what are the key goals? Being able to measure the impact and then tracking how that's panning out in reality.
Does it, Dave, actually, if you wanted to jump in on this as well, I'm curious. We talked a little bit, just for a second before the show started, about Australia, and you mentioned, because we had done an episode about it as well, this the labor shortage in Australia. We're seeing that in Canada. Skilled labor we're having these shortages everywhere. And I'm curious, does that come into play with this? Because obviously downtime, if you're talking about maintenance, then you're talking about needing personnel to do it. That must factor in somewhat, especially into these places where they're really having a tough time getting people.
I think in some ways, yes. I don't know if it's still hard to find good people to do work. I think the other part, though, is doing the meaningful work when you can do the meaningful work. Saves on your workforce, saves on safety incidents, saves on exposure to those kind of things. I think there is a piece to that, definitely. But I think when it comes to people, you still need the good people to do the work, and that's still hard to find. I don't think this will remove people from the equation, but it makes them do the work more pointedly in when it needs to be done, and possibly fewer downtime events. So it could help that way.
Right. Like it's like, Mark, back over to you as kind of getting at if you're short, if you just have just enough people to keep your maintenance, now you're going to try to get as little downtime as possible, right? Because if your labor's short, then that could be an example of. I'm just trying to kind of make real world examples of where you'd actually adjust your strategy, maybe even year to year, based on availability.
Absolutely. I think there is a great potential for the human benefit in this too, if I can put it that way, because there is a shortage of personnel increasingly in many jurisdictions where we work. Coming back to the example of the two sites, the site that had the strategy of trying to minimize downtime events, that was pushing productivity, was doing the work. If you remember in our example, we have the same size truck fleet.
Right.
The site focusing on productivity was doing the work in 41% fewer downtime events. Now, that does have a benefit. As Dave says, you of course need the trained technicians, but the team itself can be more organized with less stress. You're having less environments where they're working, where there's trucks parked outside waiting to come in. So that the work atmosphere for the team can be far more organized. And one of you certainly mentioned there's a risk mitigation too. I mean, that they're working with the trucks 41% fewer times. So you would hope there is a safety premium, if I can use that term, from having simply a more organized work environment for the tire guys.
And Mark, I'd like you to expand a little bit. You said changing from year to year, and I don't know if that example is actually in the white paper. I don't think it is, but if you could just give again that sort of real world example, how would that look? What would they actually be shifting from year to year?
The last sort of boom that I remember, well, I mean, there've been many, but I can remember in the boom sort of 2007, 2008. I was working in West Africa at the time, and there was a real shortage of mining tires. And that meant that actually having rubber on the trucks was a key thing. When you have a customer that doesn't have rubber on the trucks aren't operational. And in that, the key strategy was we need to maximize how long those tires last. And that means you're going to clearly repair the tires as much as you can. You're trying to eke out every hour you can get because that keeps the truck running.
Right.
The flip side may be I'm having more downtime events. Especially if you're running to maximize tire performance and you're essentially where it's safe to do so, you're running to failure. That's going to give you more unscheduled events that you cannot, it's very difficult to plan the end of life at the same time as a regular PM. So you're consciously making the decision that I'm trying to maximize how long the tires last because I don't have enough of them versus trying to minimize the downtime events. Conversely, if you have plenty of tires, and the price of the commodity you're mining is very high, clearly production, as much as you want the trucks to work as hard as possible, you don't want them down. And that may mean that I have a tire that's lived a good life, say, and the truck's coming down for a PM, let's say it's regular 500, and you're making a decision, you know what, I'm going to take this tire off and retire it. I'm going to scrap it now during this PM, rather than running the risk that it fails between this PM and the next one, say, 2 or 4 weeks down the line. Because you're trying to make sure the truck is running and you're trying to aggregate as much work and making decisions and consciously maybe giving a bit of tire life, losing a bit of tire life, but you're minimizing the downtime events. Because where the commodity is really high, each cost per hour of the truck not running is far more important than trying to eke out an extra 100, 150, 200 hours from the tire. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And then, Dave, I was going to ask you, or both of you, if you want to jump in on this, let's say you're going to a new site. It's your first 2 months working with them. So you start onboarding, and then you realize quite clearly they've got a tire management issue. They're clearly falling short, or they're missing something. What is the process to actually get someone, because you might be talking upping their inventory, upping their maintenance times, they're changing around their maintenance schedule. Like, these are some pretty major shifts for a company. How do you approach, well, one, just communicating that to say, oh, these shifts need to happen, and, they've got to adjust budgets, all types of things, I'm sure, follow that.
Yeah, I think it comes down to that communication and that expertise that we bring to show that the plan. But it also requires listening, what the customer is trying to do, what they want to do, what their end position that they want to be, and then making those recommendations. Again, I think through data. It's we have so much data now that we are really able to show the scenarios that we would that would come up in that example, Jared. I think that's the key point is, that journey. We talked about the journey of where tire management has come and where it's going. And that's the benefit of that is as it's moved along and we become more technical with this and more data centric with this, we can show that we can create a story through that.
Indeed, and I would add, if I can, it's a visibility of that data too that I think has changed. Historically, we would do reports, the current situation this month or this week or even today, but it was probably paper-based or sent as a file in an email. Today we're communicating the data via tools like Power BI. I mean, the dashboards, they're live for our teams as well as for the customer teams, and you can see trends every day. I mean, we're not updating continually, but every 8 hours we're updating the data. And if tire performance is dropping, stock cover is dropping, we can see this. MTBS is dropping. We have the ability, we're just far clearer on what the trends are sooner than we may have been in the past.
Does that, you notice a big difference in engagement from the client though in that? I would imagine when people see that, I mean, we see it in our tracking our data, like people viewership, we can make adjustments, go, this episode, the engagement wasn't as high, this one really, like what made this work? When people have that knowledge, do you find, I guess the other question would then be, have you noticed a shift in just responsiveness since you've been able to provide that sort of information?
Oh, absolutely. The visibility piece is key. It not only helps the speed and the value of the decision making when changes need to happen, but there's also a sort of other benefit too. The more the data is visible and the more it's used, the better it gets. Right. It becomes live and it becomes more important. And the decisions we possibly made 5 or 10 years ago, the quality of the data we were making those decisions on, the quality is far stronger and better today than I would suggest it probably was in the past. The other point too, with having a similar way of measuring performance across all the sites we operate on, we're far more able to recommend and to benchmark performance across our sites to our customers than we could in the past. I mean, you talked, Jared, about a greenfield site. When we're going into those conversations and we're asking the customers what their challenges are and what their strategy is and what they need from us, we can bring far more to the party, if you like, today by looking at the data we've got and saying, look, this is relatively similar to this example, and we can make recommendations based on what we've seen has worked elsewhere that ties in with what the customer's wanting to do and gives us a head start, if you like. So the quality of what we're suggesting and the reaction time is far more nuanced and valuable than it may have been historically. We can use that data far more effectively.
You actually touched on something I wanted to wrap up with, and Dave, again, both can jump in, but Dave, I'll put it over to you first. Is I mean, Kal Tire, your mining group, does work all over the world. With this type of data, are you able? I mean, mining is a global industry, so I understand standards have been around, globally for years. But with this type of data, Mark, you just touched on it, is that you're able to, because you're able to show so much easier, are you able to have even, your South Africa, Australia, Canada, people are able to adopt quicker because that data is so not only accurate, but just so visible to them that you'll be able to communicate and shift even a region to do things a different way?
I think yes. The answer is yes. And again, kind of piggybacks on what Mark just said. people make plans, and sometimes the plans are the right ones, and sometimes they're the wrong ones. I think with this kind of data that we have now, we can identify when, you go down one path and it's not working. You can switch gears a lot easier by
Right.
getting that data, first of all. I think on the other point, absolutely. I mean, if you have a mine, a hard rock underground mine with certain specifications that matches from South Africa to Canada, you can glean tons of data from that, and it gives you a running start of how to do some of these things. And same with surface, right? You talk about the oil sands versus harder rock mines, different compounds. You can compare those things if you know the specifications of the mine site, and having this data just it opens up a whole world to what it is that we can do. Makes us smarter, makes us look smarter, makes us be smarter, and make better decisions.
Yeah. Well, looking smarter, that's what I've been trying to do for a while.
We
so,
try. We try.
we try.
Right?
No, gentlemen, I really do appreciate it. I mean, the support Kal Tire has given our show, but then just also seeing the audience as we've, it's always an interesting thing with these shows, because as you go into these little sort of micro topics within an overall, in your case, tires, you just see people coming and watching over and over because. And I remember when I worked at an equipment yard, the people at the shop, they'd watch these like sometimes the videos would only have 200 people, but those 200 people, they're the ones who needed this information. So I just appreciate you coming on the show and actually, and even before planning, it makes a big difference to the audience actually understanding these very specific topics. So thanks for coming on again. And yeah, like you said, we'll be doing more in the new year, Dave.
Great, and we appreciate that because, again, you can hear from the insight that Mark has, the work that's been done. It goes further than it's just a tire, right? There's so much into it, and there's so much planning around it, and it's a much more complex issue. And I think it's great to see that there's others out there that watch and get as much pleasure out of it that as we do.
Yeah. Mark, thank you very much. Dave, thank you. We will see you on the next episode.
Excellent. Thanks, Jared.
Perfect. Thanks for having us.
And thank you, everybody, for watching, and sponsors and travel sponsors helping us do shows all over the world now. We've got, if you're watching this, we'll be ramping up our North American mining tour. We did an Australian mining tour, and that is all coming from the viewers and companies like the Kal Tire Mining Tire Group supporting the show. So thank you. And there'll be links to some of what we've talked about today right in the description. Please keep sharing, suggest guests. It helps make the show. So thank you, and we will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.